Bam. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the podcast. Welcome to our podcast. Today is a very special episode because I don't want to say finally, but I do feel like it's a long time coming, and it's nice to be free of Zoja and the judgment that comes along with that end of the table. No, I love her very much. She's in the other room. You might see her before the end of this episode. I'm joined today by my very good friend in comedy, Mr. Drew Lynch.
Yeah, buddy. It's been such... Yep. Oh, do we wait for applause?
And it'll die down at some point.
Oh, okay. God, guys. We got to get to the interview.
Drew, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
We've known each other for many, many years. Mm-hmm. And I think if I've been here for 9 years, I've probably known you for about 9 years.
Yeah, it's about that one.
As soon as I started doing stand-up in the city, you were one of the first comedians I ran into at Flappers of all places.
Oh, baby. Where it all ends and begins.
yeah. This Flappers, the center of the comedy universe.
That's right. Look at the coordinates.
Check it. You don't believe us? Check it out. But you're always someone who I've had a great admiration for, and you've always been such an inspiration. And above everything else, you've always been so nice and welcoming. And so when you called me up and you were like, listen, it's really important to me that I'm on Welcome to Our Podcast. It didn't take but a couple days for me to say, you know what? Yeah. Now's the time.
I'm glad you gave it a few days too. I would hate for you to not make the right decision.
You don't want to jump into a decision. Dude, but we've not only was it, we met at Flappers.
Yeah.
But then, when I would go back to do stand-up many, many years ago at things like VidCon and stuff like that, we would invite you to come with us. And I remember one year we had like 400 people in a conference room, and you were the person who provided like legitimacy for comics like me and Elliot Morgan at the time, coming from the YouTube world to stand-up.
Yeah.
And it was also like... I've talked about this ad nauseum and people are sick of hearing it, but it was also one of those things where it's like going from YouTube to stand up at that time was kind of like a, not frowned upon, but people talk shit about it. Yeah. And now it's just so funny to see everybody go back and forth from one to the other.
Yeah.
And it's like common sense now, when back in the day it was like, get out of our world, stay in your world type thing.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I've always admired about you, just to reciprocate, but also I've always felt this way, is I have got to see how much you've really settled into who you are as a comic, and you're always so funny, and the feelings are mutual in how kind you've always been. But I just feel like every time I've watched you, and we've gotten to do so many shows together, where it just feels like more and more of like coming into your own. And I think that I don't experience that a lot with a lot of comics, where I get to maybe watch them or have them watch me grow up kind of at the same time. And that is a special feeling, because there's so much in this world. And when you, especially talking about coming from a place of where it's almost frowned upon to feel like, oh no, I have some there's a little bit of social media. I come from a little bit of a social media background, or maybe I started in stand up and at the same time that kind of came up. So to come from maybe a more negative spot and to always see you on the scene and feel like there's like positivity that has the foundation uprooted from that is really kind of cool. So
yeah, I kind of understood, because there's a spectrum to everything. There's people that would get pushed from one into the other too quickly, and kind of put in a position where they're like not set up to fail, but really easy to fail, because it's hard to do one or the other when you're not used to it. But I never got the the hate from it, because it's like, from my perspective, I was just working really hard, and I came here and I started working really hard at two things. So I never got the, oh, you're just, I don't know. I can't even pick out any specific criticisms.
Yeah.
It was always kind of a
Well, you're flawless. That's why.
well, flawless and
Yeah.
jealous. Everyone's so jealous. But it did become a thing where it's like now, if you have a certain amount of followers, people who own buildings will automatically assume that you could fill the buildings based on certain numbers or metrics that you have.
Not always true, but yes.
Not always true most of the time.
Yeah.
And I proved that. And it was so hard to prove that for somebody. I can't do Levity Live in Nyack, New York. It's a 400-person room.
It is a huge room. I just let me do half, dude. Like book
Yeah.
another comic on the other side of that room and
Split
put a
the
curtain.
stage down the middle so we
Yeah.
can do it at the same time.
That's fine. Too. I don't know that the dimensions are. That's not what I was saying. That doesn't help. But no, that is a No, you're absolutely right. Any levity is intimidating as fuck.
Yeah, but beautiful.
Yeah,
You know,
beautiful. God, man, $12 for fries.
but dude, it's great to have you here. And I would love to sit across the table from you and be like, I've also watched you grow so much. But in my mind, you were always incredibly funny.
Ooh, I don't know, but thank you.
to me,
Yeah, just
which is
to
like, what's that? Who's that for? But dude, thank you so much for being here, and it's
Yeah.
awesome for you to have stuff to promote.
Yeah.
Not only have you did the AGT stuff.
I did the AGT stuff.
I
Made
was-
it sound like it was a STD. You made it sound,
Dude.
You made it sound like you went through something and you got rid of it.
And you went through a bout of AGT.
I had it. Should have got vaccinated. I don't know what I was thinking.
And it's tough for people to bounce back, but here you are doing the podcast.
I got a little respiratory thing now.
And dude, I'm trying to think of, because me and you are actually friends,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want to run through anything that's like old hat for you and the
Oh, I don't care.
podcast
No,
space.
I can make anything fresh. Don't underestimate
Okay,
me. Don't underestimate me.
Perfect, dude. So did you start comedy here? You started doing stand up here?
Yeah, I did. I started at Flappers, so I know that like there's a lot of comics who kind of they start somewhere else and then they come here. Like you're from where?
I'm from Connecticut.
Yeah.
And there wasn't, it's so cool to go back now and to see like bar shows and open mics, because there was mainly nothing. We had a club that was attached to a casino that no local people ever did, or very rarely.
Right,
It was
right.
always people passing through from New York or on the way
Yeah.
to Boston or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But now you go back and like, every bar has like a open mic night or a local comic
Yeah.
night. So there wasn't a scene.
Yeah.
So I would have to go back and forth from New York City. And then once I came out here, that was the start of like trying to do it every night type stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of the vibe that I got, and because where did you mostly start? Like as far as like your online presence and things like that, where did that come from?
That's all. Also, I love how this is you interviewing me. On
Well,
that.
I have curiosities as well. It shouldn't just be,
It shouldn't be one-sided.
dude. When I go in for job interviews, it's mostly this.
Yeah.
I talk to them.
What is this?
Yeah. You let me find out if you're good for me.
Yeah. No, I mean, I would go into New York City to do open mics. And I had been a comedian, a musician for a long time before that. So I was comfortable being on stage and talking to the crowd in between stuff.
You
But
have that vibe too.
Thanks.
I didn't know you were a musician before.
a musician who quit.
Yeah, well, yeah, man. I can't wait for you to quit comedy. I can't wait to see what you do next. But no, every musician I've ever met was always funnier than any comic friend I ever met. It's true. I
They
mean
all
that.
want to be.
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
it's
the
old
thing.
hat by
yeah.
this point. But
yeah, that's the thing. But I could see that vibe for you for quite a bit.
yeah, dude, I had the best time doing that. But it wasn't until like, I didn't know how to do it out there.
Mm-hmm.
I was just doing the outrageous guy in his 20s open mic jokes for like shock value type stuff to see if I can, break up on a room full of people.
Yeah.
And like thinking that I was way funnier than I actually was on stage, because no one expects the musician to be funny.
Right.
So when you're funny as the musician, people start going, you should actually be doing stand up.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I was like, I was never smart enough to do stand up. But then in my late 20s, I went through some life stuff and I had some stuff to talk about, a little bit of perspective finally on like my teens and early 20s at least. And I found, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's mainly about you got to get a little bit of life experience, and you have to be able to like step back from it and be like, okay, I see that for what it was, and here's my commentary on how it was at this time.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think when you're almost kind of like swinging at something when you're in your 20s, and then when you miss it enough, or maybe like if we're going with the analogy of like a punching bag and it comes back and hits you, it is almost like I think about this where when talking about when you get that perspective of or maybe that life experience that we're talking about, where you see that for what it was, and maybe for the loss or the pain that it was, or maybe where you swung and you missed, how you recalibrate is kind of where I think a lot of comics emerge. It's not necessarily what happens early on. I mean, I think I go back to this example and say what you want about maybe his stand-up or his style, but like Kevin Hart is someone who he had a deal very early on, and then I think he was someone who he spent that money maybe when he didn't have it, and then some things didn't get greenlit, and then he kind of disappeared for a while.
He was buying a lot of the arenas that he was playing.
Is that really?
And a lot of people were trying to talk him out of it, and he just wouldn't. He's like, I need to buy the building.
Do real estate, Kev. What are you doing?
I mean, it's like, what do you really want to do? What's the comedy up front for? But
yeah. Why are you laundering yourself?
Yeah. And now he just has all these buildings.
Yeah, now he has all these buildings. His true passion found his way back to him. It's exactly like Flappers. Yeah, but he like, and that's just kind of like an inspiring example of just, that's why I think you see so many comics who really season, after the time that they do, like, and enough time passes where that fork in the road happens, where they go, all right, I can't continue to do this because I swung and I missed and I can't deal with that. Or they'll have that time where they evaluate and recalibrate, kind of like you're talking about, and you get that life experience. And then, like, I'll say in the years that I've known you, there is a noticeable shift from you just feel more like you just know who you are. And I think that's so important, and it's something that I also feel for myself I haven't really in the past known as much of who I am as I wanted to.
Dude, it kind of waxes and wanes, doesn't it? It's like when I moved here and I was doing the YouTube stuff and I had a good footing in the YouTube stuff, I was like, I know who I am in relation to this stuff. Mm-hmm. And like me holding the camera and coming back and editing, I had control over the whole thing. I had my little niche, and I understood that very well. And I thought that would translate completely to the stage. Plus, I was in my late 20s by that point. I was like 27, 28. And then stand-up is like a job made out of the swinging and missing. Mm-hmm. Even on a real micro level, like just your regular set is like, here's 5 jokes that didn't work for 6 months or whatever. And now here's the working versions of those. And it's every night going back and recording your set and be like, swing and a miss. What can I tweak to make that land better? Yeah. And, there were times you find your identity in really weird, different parts of the city. It's like a lot of people connect their identity to a place, like an actual building. Mm-hmm. Like I know a lot of the Comedy Store guys take great pride in being at the Comedy Store, and that becomes part of their story and their upbringing. There's improv people, there's Laugh Factory people. Mm-hmm. And all of it is just like finding your footing, and then it goes away a little bit, and then it could be demoralizing. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, well, who am I in the face of not knowing who I am at like 30? Yeah. Can I still be learning? Is it too embarrassing to learn who I am on stage? Yeah. But, there have been times where confidence has been checked several times since being here as what I would consider like a grown-up. Because I always thought, I was a teenager who didn't have confidence until like until I was tired of everybody's shit. And then you learn a little bit about yourself through that. And then I thought I knew who I was in my 20s. And looking back in my 20s at the end of my 30s, I'm like, that's just a grown-up teenager, completely different than that. Mm-hmm. And then
how do you feel in your 50s?
In my 50s, I feel like it's hard to breathe and my knees hurt. I have no arenas to my name.
None. Not even a one arena.
But it's like, then you start, there was a little part of myself that I learned about when I stopped doing bringer shows and was able to make strangers laugh who didn't owe you anything. When you're at open mic and you make other comedians who don't give a shit about you laugh, you learn a little bit about yourself through that.
Yeah.
So how would you say that's changed for you from your early 20s to where you are now?
I would think I was just naive in the dimensions of the path, or maybe the perception that you have of what the path is. And we all go through this phase where it's like, all right, we're gonna sprint until we're just gonna be out of breath for a really long time, and then hopefully at the end of that little sprint we'll have achieved what we wanted to. And that happens thousands of times where you don't get to where you want to get to after that sprint before you just realize that you're just in this marathon. I mean, and that sounds proverbial, and it's silly to bring up, but like, the way you see things, sometimes they're not, they're just not that way.
Especially with stand-up, man.
Yeah.
It's like everybody jumps in with both feet without having any idea of how the business side of it works.
Yeah, and I've always said stand-up is something that if you see somebody do it well, it looks easy, and if you see someone bomb, you think you can do better.
Yeah.
And
dude, nothing creates more stand-ups than watching somebody eat shit. Because then you have
every time someone
15 to 30 people being like, yeah, I think today's the day I'm going to go to an open mic. I could do that.
It's either one. Like if someone bombs, you think you could do better. If someone does well, there's so much cadence, there's so much that you don't see that goes into making it look good, that you almost, you're the funny guy maybe at your office or whatever, and you're so anytime we do well or we don't, someone is going to try it. We are a virus.
Yeah.
And I think for me, when I was so young, like my relationship, I've always defined my struggles and my biggest struggles with my relationship with my speech. And you've known me for so long, and you've known, how, like, probably just watching me on stage, like how insecure I have been, and then at times how confident I've appeared with it, and trying to combat any sort of insecurity with, through writing and through talking about it. And my relationship to the insecurity of my speech has also kept me hidden from having a lot of like meaningful or real friendships or relationships with comics, because I constantly think that maybe because the audience is feeling a certain way about it, or there are comics who feel maybe a certain way, like maybe it's a crutch, or maybe it was something that that I never have felt like I had like a seat at the table, and I talked with Jason Cheney about this, where I was just like, he couldn't believe it. He was like, I don't even know the word. It was like incredulous. He just couldn't believe the fact that I would actually believe that I just sometimes feel like I don't belong. Yeah. And hearing him react to the way that I was talking, I guess made me feel like maybe I'm just way off the mark, and maybe there's some super insecure things that I have to address. And so in talking with this life experience, or this seasoned sort of approach or the seasoned perspective that you get from it, seeing how little I care, and how much less I care about it, and how much more of an impact that creates in the fluency and healing of my speech. It's like this crazy it's a paradox, it's like the more I care about it, the worse it is, and the less I care, then it doesn't. So it sucks that it's such a focal point, but it truly is like that rosebud for me, where I'm like, this is just the catalyst for everything, and it all comes back to it. Right.
Now, for people who don't know, you're talking about you used to have a more pronounced stutter because of an accident you had. You got hit in the throat with a softball.
Yeah.
I think it never mattered to me, because I thought you were up there, you were doing such a good job, you're so funny, and I thought that you were just freezing cold the whole time.
Dude, West Nyack, they keep it so cold,
if
man.
we could get someone to just turn up the heat a little bit, this guy is doing a great job.
I think that's all it was, is I was just cold.
Yeah.
And
overcoming. Talk about overcoming being cold.
it's tough, dude. Like,
I see you today with a jacket, and we're always learning.
this, a lot of comics decide between LA and New York, and that was when I knew.
Yeah.
Could you imagine if I was in New York?
No.
Oh my God.
Career over. Dude, I'm glad you brought it up because I wanted to talk about a specific part of that, to whatever degree you're comfortable doing.
Yeah.
But there were people who, I don't remember the exact details, but like assume that you were faking it or assume that you like put it on.
Yeah.
And I noticed something in myself when I lived in Connecticut and living here and just meeting a completely different group of people. It's like when I was in Connecticut and I wasn't in the entertainment business at all, you see people doing stuff and you kind of almost think that you have a right to assume that you know the way things are, even if you don't have all the details.
Yeah.
You can look at someone and the one thing that you perceive that they do and everything around it and be like, well, that person's probably like this. He probably has this because of this.
Yeah.
And we do it all the time.
Yeah.
And then the more I like moved here and climbed the ladder here and just met different successful people in the industry, you see, usually you have to be pretty successful for people to talk about you like that on a grand scale. But it's like people really assume that they know what's up and assume that they kind of have the right to publicly talk about what they think is happening. And it's normally very far off the mark from what's actually happening.
Oh yeah, small town shit. I call it small town shit. If you're ever in a different room of the house that when you go visit your parents and they're talking about something, it's small town shit. You're just like, this is the way they actually think. Like for the Super Bowl, there was a part where Rihanna glazed over her genitals, and my mom, she turned into she went, oh okay, like she went, that's enough, like and
look
it's
how
like,
cold she is.
Yeah, it's all about temperature. But she was just, it's like, does that obviously doesn't affect much. I mean, and so I think I agree with you in that there's such a layered, like if we're talking about something specifically like a stutter, there's people who have no idea that Ed Sheeran did. People have no idea Paul Rudd did. I think people know maybe James Earl Jones did or Mel Tillis or some people, but there's and that's just things that I know because those are like heroes. I mean, they're heroes to me in that, like, you just never know. You would never know what it is that they went through, or maybe the life experience that they've had than they're seasoned, that they use to season who they are today. And I'm inclined to agree with you. It's like the more you meet someone who's so, it's like, it's crazy when you meet someone and you either like them or you dislike them. And then you learn something that endears you to them because they just that was just such a big part of their past. And honestly, I think that could be maybe where I'm headed, where my speech is so fluent that you probably never know. There's people who they may have saw me however many years ago do TV and then see me now, and sometimes people have told me that they weren't even able to initially draw the line that it was the same person.
Wow.
So,
well, you have a beard now.
Yeah, and that's the difference.
Yeah.
I was so cold.
Your face was so cold. It really affected your speech back then. No one even hinted that maybe you should grow a beard. Kind of seems like shitty. I don't know what kind of management you had, but that's shitty guidance.
Well, I started to grow one. People kept giving me spots in Echo Park. And I was like, this is not what I want.
No, I'm not an alt commie. I have jokes.
Yeah, you don't get it. It's not just premises and then I jiggle.
Which is fine, but it's not what you wanted to do.
Which is fine and hilarious, by the way. I should have been an alt comic.
Dude, so now you have this special. Tell me about this special.
Yeah, sure. The special's called And These Are Jokes. These Are Jokes was already taken. Dimitri Martin.
So you have to
rest in
show.
peace.
Dude, Dimitri Martin, speaking of growing up, obstacles growing up,
yeah,
there was a few months in my early stages of comedy where I would think of something and then people would be like, that's a Dimitri Martin joke. Like several times with different, I was like, okay, well, fuck that. I won't even touch that kind of stuff. How about this? I'm like, yeah. Yeah, that's him. I don't know why you have that easel, but you're going to want to leave that. So that's a bummer that he took your,
Dude, he's after everyone's, dude.
damn, dude.
Yeah, so he has these are jokes. So but which is fine because I say the phrase "and these are jokes" several times in the last part. So it's 40 minutes and it's 4 bits. It is about it's about Dahmer, and then it's like 10 minutes on vaccine, then 10 minutes on homeless or unhoused, and and then abortion. And I was talking to my team about it, and they were like, do you want to do Fallon? Like, I was like, because we don't think that's gonna happen with some of the stuff you just said. And I was like, yeah, no, that's fine. But I just think, I'm not someone who's very prideful, and I'm not someone who is I'm not very good at advocating for myself. But for this particular special, I'm doing several mini specials this year, and for this first one I just kind of wanted it to be almost impersonal because I wanted to showcase that I could write about something at length that has nothing to do with me at all. And I've almost had this vendetta or agenda to be like, I got my start from making so many self-deprecating jokes about my stutter, and there was a time where I think maybe comics, or maybe based on my own projections, I thought that other people thought that was all that I could talk about. And so now I've compensated, and I feel like such a big way with something like this. And now it's just become, it's become so much about, like, if I ever were to address it, it would be because I did stutter out on stage, and it's like, all right, mention it and then fucking, move on.
But that's growth and maturity as like a professional entertainer.
Yeah.
You don't just want to, even just style wise, it's like the YouTube stuff back in the day popped off super hard, but I'm not the type of person who could do the same thing over and over again, even though that is like the recipe for success.
Yeah.
Find, especially on like, TikTok or Instagram, anything on the internet, vertical video related, if people can recognize you as the person who does a specific type of thing in a little like, variations on a nuanced way, that's like the recipe.
Of course.
But as a creative person in general, I was going to say creative professional, but creative person, it's like you don't always want to do the same thing over and over again. So I know how tough that is, and I applaud you for doing that. And you're definitely like funny enough to take anything, whether it be topical about yourself or whatever, and make it hilarious.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, but you're absolutely right. Like that, you shrink yourself down or water yourself down to whatever that one lane thing is. I mean, the algorithm just like jizzes all over itself.
Yeah.
And I didn't mean to say that.
I mean, we'll cut it out.
If the algorithm's listening.
Really say stuff like
no,
that.
it's not about your audience. Ask AI. If you ask AI, what is jizz?
Siri, what's jizz at? You want to switch?
Sure.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Drew,
It's
been a pleasure. I love you so much.
love you so much.
And I mean this from the bottom of my heart. Anything you need from me,
Okay.
you got it for
Okay.
the rest of your life. I love you very much. You're a very special place in my heart.
Thank you, Mike. You too, buddy.
Are your keys out there? I could just take your car around the... Okay.
Don't touch anybody's car. Can you make sure that I'm in focus?
Yeah.
Hi, Drew.
Hi, Zoja.
Welcome.
How are you?
So I heard you guys saying before that you have so you have a special coming out, yes, right? And then you also said you were gonna have like a bunch of like mini.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing this year. I'm doing. The goal is to do 2 in the first 2 quarters of the year, and then 2 in the last 2 quarters of the year. So I guess that's 1 per quarter. But we dropped this one on Thursday, and that one, as I was telling to Mike, is it's very impersonal. It's just jokes about things that are, I would say, I don't like the word edgy, but I would say people could probably get upset by it.
Yeah.
I mean, you could, things don't have to be edgy for people to get upset these
Yeah.
days. But and then we film the next one in a month, and I just think, and you probably already know this, but content is just getting shorter and shorter and shorter.
Right.
And so we have I think I've always I think something that I found out about myself this year was I think I work really well against a deadline. It's just I have to be the one who sets it.
Yeah.
And we're all kind of just in the ethers of just like, maybe I'll just keep working on my craft and then something. But it's like, it's kind of like with podcasting, or it's kind of like with videos or a hard schedule. You create that deadline for yourself, and then somehow your performance acclimates to getting that done.
Yeah.
And so making that on a bigger scale, even though it's in a smaller special, is kind of the idea. So it's almost like I have this sort of vitality to do it now, because you've almost created this deadline as your employer, and so now as the comic or employee, you have to just be like, all right, this is the deliverable, let me get that done before then. So
yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I know, Mike is so disciplined in like his daily, right? Like when you work for yourself, I work for myself, Mike works for himself.
Yeah.
I know that it's like such a hard like grind, right?
Yeah.
And we're constantly trying to figure out how to make it better, how to make it, less stressful,
Yeah.
right? And you're always like your own worst critic. And then when somebody else has something to say about your shit, you're like, no, fuck you. I just poured my heart and soul into all of that.
Yeah.
And then like keeping those goals for yourself, or those timelines and deadlines, it's tough. It's hard. It's because you're the only one holding yourself accountable.
yeah, I think it was Chris Rock said that, like, when you have a job, you have all the time in the world, but when you have a career, there's no time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's true. I mean, I'm sure he did it in a very funny Chris Rock way, but the theme of that, or the message of that, is so true. And I think something that's helped me quite a bit is if you don't put something in like a list form where you are dictating to yourself what has to be done, you'll abuse yourself. And that's I mean, I think that's what's so hard, is like in getting, I was just talking with Mike, and like getting older, you learn to maybe be find that balance of understanding and work.
Yeah. I mean, I know for Mike, there's any time you pick up any notebook that's in this house, and these tiny little notebooks that he has, there's always a list of things, to-do list or whatever.
Yeah.
And I work on a schedule too.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, I know that I have an hour and a half with this client or whatever, and I have to be out and on time. So it's like, I get it. And being a creative is always so hard to stay motivated and creative, and constantly thinking about what it is that you need to do.
Well, what is your process for how you get there? Like, for how you achieve where you feel most creative?
Because doing hair, I'm a hairdresser, I pull a lot of, creativity from, the little short videos that I see on Instagram, and, kind of seeing what would work for a certain type of skin type, or even just talking to my client. What are they wearing today? What are they doing? What do they do for a living?
Yeah.
What's their makeup palette? Like just things like that. And you think about all of that, and you kind of go.
Have you met my wife? She's like, says all this stuff that you're saying. She doesn't do what you do, but there's so much thought into that I would never think of.
Right. It's like paying attention to detail.
Yeah.
And I have met your wife a few times now.
Yeah.
But it's always like in passing, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's like, what is their personality like? What's their hair type? What's their, and then, I'm on such a strict schedule too, like I could have a 6-hour appointment, but I can also have another 2.5 hour, 3-hour appointment right after that.
Yeah.
So it's like really making sure that I figure out how I'm going to attack the project, right? Is what it is. So it's like, okay, the first half of this project, it's me putting like highlights or foils or color or whatever in their hair, and then going from there, and then figuring out.
And when you do this, podcast with Mike, like from the episodes that I've listened to with you guys, first of all, I love your guys' dynamic. It's a really cool thing that like when you get to work with your partner and you get it, because I mean when you get to be motivated together and you have like a shared thing, it actually is a really cool experience. But I guess my question is like when you guys do it, like how do you spend so much time together and still find ways to talk about like different things?
Well, thank God for our audience. Like we have such a great audience and they're just so like active and like anytime that we ask for questions, and a lot of it is based like on relationship type or whatever, advice type stuff. That's what it's kind of transitioned to in the last couple of months, which seems to be doing really well.
Yeah.
So that's really nice because there were times where Mike and I don't really get a chance to hang out. To tell you the honest truth, we hardly see each other.
Wow.
So because my schedule is so different, Wednesday through Saturday, and then he's gone in the evenings.
Yeah.
Typically Sunday, Mondays, sometimes on Tuesdays if I'm not running errands and doing whatever, we get to kind of like hang out. But even still, it's here and there.
Yeah.
I am cleaning. I'm doing, running errands. He's still working. He still has his everyday job.
Yeah.
So like if he's not doing something, he feels unproductive. So while I'm in the kitchen, whether I'm meal prepping or doing whatever, he's in here or on a computer out there. And like we're still in passing and we don't really get to sit down and like spend time. This weekend, I actually was able to like rearrange my schedule on Friday and Saturday. And I did get to go to San Diego with him, which was awesome.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's nice.
So
I love San Diego.
yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So, like it really, doing the podcast really forces us to like sit down and really reconnect and like talk.
Yeah.
And, after the podcast, I'm the one that produces it. So, I'm still in here, I'm still working, doing whatever. And then that's really, Mondays are our day to like really catch up and like check in with one another.
Yeah.
Which is great. Like, okay, what do you have going on? Like we're both traveling this week. So like I leave tomorrow night on a red eye, he leaves Thursday morning. And then it's kind of like, so, yeah, I mean, it's forcing us to like sit down and like really get a chance to talk to each other because during the week we almost never see each other.
Yeah.
So
that's so cool. I mean, it's cool that you guys are in such a flow but at the same time you have this shared thing that you guys come together for. And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's hard trying to like having like a podcast is like having a kid a little bit. You just have to like be like, how am I going to work this in? How am I going to work this time into this schedule and produce it? And yeah, I mean the podcasting and the conversation that's so little of it. It's everything in post that takes up all the time.
Right. I mean, and I'm lucky too because like we get along really well, and we actually like to spend time with each other. I mean,
gross.
I wish he wasn't here for that, but
yeah, it's gross. Man. It felt weird watching that. Dude.
I know it was awkward.
It was so weird to be a part of.
So. I just really say it for the podcast listeners so that they think it's actually a thing.
Yeah.
Yes, we will.
Do we? Okay.
We're gonna have a sex party and we need the.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's hurtful.
Yeah, it's retractable from the ceiling.
It's also so cold in here. What can I?
We like it that way.
Oh, help nothing.
But yeah, so like we do get a chance to like this really does like help us like just be able to reconnect and do and see each other and and being both of us being creatives and workaholics, it's
the best.
Yeah.
I mean, and I meant what I said when I said to Mike, but it's like every time I get to see you guys, it's very cool. Like when you meet a comic that you respect a lot, who I feel is grounded and transparent and just a good person, and that extends to their partner as well. It's a really, really cool thing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
I also
it's weird that he just kind of came in and we were
talking
talking nicely about him. It's very frustrating.
I know. It's so annoying. He's so annoying. So what else do you have going on? Do you have any like shows coming up? Are you touring? Are you?
I'm actually building a podcast studio myself. I've podcasted for so long. But it just feels like a lot of people, like I love your guys' set, and I think like investing in a set, like there's people pumping a lot into their budget of it, and that's something I'm kind of more excited for, and I'm sure I'll be able to have you guys on whenever it's built. But I feel like transitioning from someone who does maybe some sketches or some I almost don't even like the term creator, but it's so interesting, this dynamic Mike and I talking about, like we were creating things in addition to stand up before it was cool or before it was whatever.
Yeah.
And now there's all these stand-ups probably brought on because of the pandemic. I think a huge influence brought on people being like forced to have to turn their attention to online. Now a lot of them are finding ways to grow their audience on socials, which is something like, Mike and I bond over the fact that that's something we've been trying to do for a while.
Forever, yeah.
And we were like laughed at, or not laughed at, but like we said, it was a little taboo or a little scoffed at to just be like, trying to.
You're on YouTube.
Yeah.
Fuck you, bro.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. So, so it's just one of those things that I'm very proud of. I'm very proud of Mike, and I'm very proud of the fact that we get to see each other around the scene. And I don't have many relationships with many comics where you see them grow up from like where they are, or they see you grow up and from the way that you are. So
right.
It's very cool.
Yeah. I think, anytime Mike talks about you, he just like lights up, and like we adore you. My sister's a huge fan of you. And anytime I see you, she's like, oh my God, he's so fucking funny,
That's so nice. Where's your sister? Where are you guys? You
both of us are from Connecticut.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
crazy.
We met through mutual friends. Yeah, we've been together. It was beginning of February. It was like 12 years.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You guys, it feels like you guys have been together longer than I've been alive. It almost feels like I knew you before I knew Mike. It was like, get to meet my husband.
Right. Thank you for taking the time and coming out and hanging out. And I know you have a heart out, so we're going to get you out of here.
Yeah, sure.
But,
Thanks, man.
it's always a pleasure. And I will send me links and stuff for wherever it's going to be. And I will put it all in the description. And, we love you, and we hope to have you on again.
Thanks, man. I love you guys. I really appreciate it.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. As you all know, patreon.com is a virtual tipping and rewards website where you give us a little bit of your hard-earned cash, and our $10 group gets a shout out. This week's episode was pretty fun, I do have to say. Anyway, the shout outs go as follows. Alex Behringer, husband trying stealing Alex. Ryan Cruteau, Siobhan, Cole Rusty, Joseph Capricusio, Shannon Haynes, DLD, Ernesto, Whoa, Mau, Wow, Bow Bow, Luis and Odette, Lauren Chauncey, Paul Gilliam, Derek Helling, Steve Diergo, Chris McCarthy, Trevor the Werefishy, Joe Penn, Happy Birthday Starlight, JJ McToots, Rachel last name, Mike Genie, Alan Garcia, Connie Tryon, Isabella Sparkles, Antero Baez, Johnny Rosito, Handcrafted Neckwear, CCPB&J, Admam, Emily Paget, Caleb Perkins, Giant Tom Hanks, Lizzie Love, Gavin Welsh, Someone Tell Aaron, Jackie Hammond, Guy with Long Hair, Chris Johnson, Anna Valles, Benjamin Putz, Happy Birthday Week Josh, Snuggle Pig H, Christina Camille, Mary Juana, Michael Johnson, Kayla Johnston, Jules Run, Grant Levasseur, Chad Clark, Heather Ashley, What is Cat, Katie Taylor, Shane Welsh, Evan Canoe, Joe Band, Milky Beans, Jess Enright, Lillian Carrillo, Magnus Silva, Barrington Lloyd Lovett, Ben Fuchs, Theodorus Karen Bellis, Janisha Tutton, Danny Sinclair, Jacob D. Bradford, Justine Beebestein, Just Josh, Sergeant Sparty, Ed Birch, Helen Ford, Luminos, Superfloss, Tatiana Clay, Danielle Di Verona, Dev Rabavro, Jesse Stillwell, Katie Lee G, Rob Devereux, Don Bjor, Nestor De Leon III, Luis Hernandez, Alexander Legowski, Monique Quistorf, Jamie Garner, Cody Ostelas, Felicia Chamberi, and Matthew J. Palka. You guys, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this. Bye.
Great job. Bye.
you.